Conor McGregor stepped into the octagon for the first time in 5 years. 69 seconds later, he was on the canvas with a blown-out knee. And the biggest comeback in combat sports had turned into the shortest walk to a paycheck in his career. The number attached to that minute and 9 seconds is what everyone wants to know. How much money changed hands for a fight that barely started? People online are already running the math on what a single minute inside that cage is worth. When Conor McGregor's name is on the poster, so let's actually break down the figure, the fight, and the fallout. Starting with what happened in Las Vegas that night. The morning of the fight, Las Vegas was already sold out. T-Mobile Arena had record numbers walking through the doors, and Dana White would later confirm the card broke the promotion's record for its highest-grossing gate. This was UFC 329, McGregor versus Holloway 2, and the buildup had been building for years, not weeks. Then the cage door shut, and it was over before most people in the nosebleeds had finished their beer. McGregor, 37, sporting a mohawk similar to the one he wore for his UFC debut more than a decade ago, appeared to injure his right knee in the opening seconds on Saturday after sprinting across the canvas and launching a flying kick at Holloway. To begin his rematch with Max Holloway, McGregor rushed to the center of the octagon and threw a jumping switch kick. He missed the mark, then threw another head kick and awkwardly fell to the floor. From there, it just got worse. McGregor then slipped to the canvas multiple times in the ensuing exchanges, with Holloway repeatedly calling attention to the injury before referee Mike Beltran stopped the action. The official time on the scorecards read 1 minute and 9 seconds, 69 seconds. And just like that, one of the most hyped main events in UFC history was a technical knockout by injury. Holloway didn't even want the finish that way. Holloway said he kept telling Beltran to stop the fight because McGregor was injured, but the Irishman kept saying fight. He said during the fight, you could see McGregor's demeanor change. And once he saw him hurt, he told the referee to call it, adding he just hoped for a speedy recovery. That's not the kind of thing you hear after most UFC finishes. Usually the winner is hyping the crowd. Here, Holloway was basically defending the guy he'd just beaten. Let's give it up for Conor McGregor, guys, Holloway said afterward to a booing T-Mobile Arena. What an absolute animal. When we were in here, I was trying to call the fight off, and he kept asking to fight on. But you guys are lucky because there's going to be a Holloway versus McGregor 3 now. Let's get this money, boys. He added that he had McGregor weak in the knees, I guess. So now the number. What did McGregor actually get paid for that minute and 9 seconds? The UFC has not officially disclosed fighter salaries for UFC 329, but multiple reports estimate that McGregor earned a base salary of at least $15 million for his long-awaited return against Holloway. That's the guaranteed number before anything else gets added on. With pay-per-view revenue, sponsorships, and other promotional compensation, his total earnings are believed to have exceeded $30 million, though those figures have not been confirmed by the promotion. Do the math on that and it's staggering. $30 million spread across 69 seconds comes out to somewhere in the range of $434,000 a second. For context, most people don't make that in a year. McGregor made it before the second minute of the fight even started. And here's the thing that makes it even more jarring. Despite suffering a serious knee injury just 69 seconds into the fight, McGregor's reported payout was not expected to change. Win, lose, blown out knee or not, the number was locked in the moment he signed for the fight. That's the reality of being the biggest draw combat sports has ever produced. You get paid for showing up, not for how long you stay. Reaction across the sport was instant, and it wasn't kind. Fighters who've shared cages with McGregor, guys who know exactly what a torn ligament feels like, started reacting within minutes. Kevin Lee posted asking how McGregor jumped 2 seconds into the fight and blew his knee, joking that game speed is different than practice. Derek Brunson simply posted that there was ain't no way. Jamahal Hill called it unfortunate and very disappointing. And Matt Brown didn't hold back at all. He posted, told you Conor would never fight again. That's the moment. That's the 69 seconds and the money attached to it. But to actually understand why a single minute is worth 8 figures, you have to go back further, because this isn't the first time McGregor has turned a blink-and-you-miss-it fight into a fortune. This isn't new territory for McGregor. Before UFC 329, there was another homecoming fight that also barely lasted a round, and it set the blueprint for exactly what just happened in Las Vegas. Back in January 2020, McGregor returned to the Octagon after over a year away to fight Donald "Cowboy" Cerrone. He bounced back with a 40-second TKO victory over Donald Cerrone at UFC 246. In January 2020, before suffering consecutive defeats to Dustin Poirier in 2021, 40 seconds. Even shorter than the Holloway fight would end up being. Before that fight, McGregor had been talking a big game about what he expected to earn. McGregor told ESPN's Ariel Helwani that his take for the Cerrone fight would be the biggest in his MMA career, and estimated that it would be in the neighborhood of $80 million. On the back of claiming he took in $50 million for the Khabib bout, the actual disclosed number told a very different story. McGregor earned a flat $3 million salary for his 40-second technical knockout win against Donald Cerrone in Saturday's headliner at the T-Mobile Arena in Las Vegas. Now, that $3 million was just the base commission reported number, the figure that goes to the State Athletic Commission. It never included the real money, the pay-per-view cut, which is where McGregor makes his actual fortune. Analysts picked apart his $80 million claim and found it basically impossible. McGregor said he'd make around $80 million for the fight, and the PPV cost $65. If it sold 2 million buys, possible, but at the very high end of projections, he'd have to be entitled to 62% of gross returns, which is basically impossible since no fighter gets that share. Meanwhile, Cerrone, the guy who actually took the beating, barely got a fraction of the spotlight money. McGregor earned a flat $3 million salary for his 40-second technical knockout win against Donald Cerrone, while Cerrone pocketed $200,000 in defeat. Cerrone would later go public about how little he actually saw beyond that number, despite fans assuming he'd cashed in too. A fan commented on Cerrone's social media post that he was happy the fighter went home with close to $7.10 million after UFC 246, and Cerrone responded, "Ha ha ha ha, 7 to 10 million. I didn't get PPV money. What the world thinks and what really happens is so different. I made flat money." That's the blueprint. McGregor is the one who gets the pay-per-view points. The opponent gets a flat commission number and nothing more, regardless of how the fight actually goes or how many people bought the broadcast. Despite the event's massive popularity, selling over 1 million PPVs, Cerrone emphasized that his payout did not include any share of the PPV revenue, and instead he was compensated with a flat fee of $200,000, as stipulated by his existing contract with the UFC. Then there's the fight everyone brings up whenever McGregor's name and money show up in the same sentence: Khabib Nurmagomedov at UFC 229. On that occasion, McGregor had a guaranteed $30 million purse for the fight, but by the end of it, he received almost triple of the initially estimated paycheck, with a reported $85 million going straight to his bank account. That fight didn't even go the full distance either. It ended in the 4th round by submission, followed by a brawl outside the cage that generated its own wave of headlines. And before either of those, there was the one that dwarfs everything else in his career: the Mayweather boxing match. His biggest payday came in 2017, when his crossover boxing bout against Floyd Mayweather Jr. reportedly earned him around $100 million, according to Forbes. That fight went 10 rounds, so it doesn't quite fit the seconds for millions pattern, but it cemented something important. McGregor's name alone moves more money than almost anyone else in combat sports, win or lose, long fight or short one. Add it all up across his career, and the number gets almost hard to process. Various estimates place his total combat sports earnings at around $235 million, although the exact figure remains difficult to verify due to undisclosed PPV shares and contractual bonuses. So when people saw the Holloway fight end in 69 seconds and immediately started calculating dollars per second, they weren't reacting to something new. They were reacting to a pattern that's been building since 2020. a fighter whose shortest nights in the cage have consistently produced some of his biggest paydays. The Cerrone fight proved the model works, even when the fight barely happens. UFC 329 was just the newest and shortest version of it. To understand why UFC 329 generated the kind of money it did, you need to understand just how long McGregor had been gone, and how hard the promotion leaned into that absence to sell the fight. McGregor's much-hyped MMA return after 5 years away ended in disappointment on Saturday in Las Vegas, as the former two-division champion suffered what appeared to be another blown-out knee. In the opening seconds of his first fight since 2021, 5 years is an eternity in a sport where careers rarely stretch past a decade at the top level. McGregor famously suffered a blown-out knee 13 years ago in his first UFC meeting against Max Holloway, and more than a decade later, history repeated itself in the most anticlimactic way possible at UFC 329. The layoff wasn't for lack of trying to get back sooner. After a lengthy recovery and a canceled comeback against Michael Chandler in 2024, he is now set to return at UFC 329 in a welterweight bout against BMF champion Max Holloway. That Chandler fight fell apart for a reason that, in hindsight, feels almost eerie. After breaking his leg against Poirier 5 years earlier, McGregor was slated to meet Michael Chandler in June 2024. But that was canceled after McGregor suffered a broken toe in training. A toe injury pushed the date. A knee injury ended the eventual comeback in barely over a minute. Outside the cage, McGregor's 5 years away weren't quiet ones either. A jury in an Irish civil court found him liable for rape in 2018, and in October 2025, he accepted an 18-month ban for whereabouts failures after he missed 3 attempts by Combat Sports Anti-Doping to collect biological samples from him in 2024, though the ban was backdated and expired in March. None of that stopped ticket sales. If anything, the controversy around him only fed the promotional machine that drove UFC 329 into record territory. Once the fight was finally locked in, the UFC did what it always does with McGregor, turned the entire fight week into a spectacle. The pre-fight face-off between him and Holloway wasn't just a photo op. Conor McGregor returned to the Octagon for the first time in 5 years at UFC 329. After a heated fight week that included multiple tense face-offs with Max Holloway, including one in which McGregor ripped the sunglasses off his opponent's face and threw them to the ground. That single clip did numbers most sports content never touches. Dana White brought it up not once but twice in the aftermath. Using it as evidence, there was nothing wrong with McGregor heading in. The doctors checked him out before the fight, and he looked damn good at the press conference, and he looked fine at the weigh-ins, White said, adding, "What did the face-off do? 44 million views in 24 hours? Other reports had that number climbing even higher by fight night." White noted the face-off had 80 million views, adding that if there was a pre-existing injury, somebody would have noticed it because nobody noticed anything. That kind of attention doesn't happen by accident, and it's exactly why the money attached to the fight ballooned the way it did. Every tense exchange, every stare-down clip, every headline about McGregor's return fed straight into ticket sales and pay-per-view interest. Conor McGregor returned to the Octagon after nearly 5 years away from active competition, with UFC 329 taking place at T-Mobile Arena in Las Vegas as the centerpiece of the promotion's annual International Fight Week. The betting markets reflected the uncertainty of a 5-year layoff too. Nobody was totally sure what version of McGregor would show up, which only added to the drama the promotion was selling. The main event pitted McGregor against former two-division champion Max Holloway in a welterweight bout, a rematch of their 2013 meeting that McGregor won by unanimous decision, marking McGregor's first appearance since he broke his leg against Dustin Poirier at UFC 264 in July 2021, and Holloway's first fight at 170 pounds after moving up from lightweight. By fight night, the Gate had already made history regardless of what happened inside the cage. UFC CEO Dana White spoke to the media at UFC 329's post-fight press conference. and reacted to the disappointing conclusion to a card that broke the promotion's record for highest-grossing gate. That's the financial backdrop that made a 69-second fight worth tens of millions of dollars. The build-up alone had already justified the price tag before a single punch landed. The stacked undercard didn't hurt either, giving fans plenty to talk about even after the main event fell apart. The co-main event featured a consequential lightweight clash between Benoit Saint-Denis and Paddy Pimblett, with Corey Sandhagen against Mario Bautista, Brandon Royval against Lonair Kavanagh, and King Green against Terrence McKinney also on the main card. Pimblett himself needed only a fraction of a round to finish his fight, adding to the theme of the night: big names, short nights, big paydays. While McGregor's number dominates every headline, the rest of the card tells its own version of the same story. And it's worth putting his payday next to everyone else's to really understand the scale of it. Start with the man across the cage from him. Max Holloway, stepping up to welterweight for the first time, is reportedly guaranteed around $3 million for the rematch, a figure that would still rank among the biggest paydays of his career, even though it sits well below McGregor's reported purse. Think about that gap for a second. Holloway won the fight. He's the one who walked out with the victory on his record, and he still likely made a fraction of what McGregor took home for losing. That's not new for Holloway either. It's been the pattern in his biggest fights. Marca previously reported that Holloway received nearly $2 million against Ilia Topuria, before reportedly earning close to $4 million, including commercial incentives, for his fight against Charles Oliveira. He's one of the most decorated fighters of his generation, a former two-division champion, and he's still operating in a completely different financial tier than McGregor. Now look at the rest of the card, because the gap only widens from there. Paddy Pimblett, one of the UFC's most marketable lightweights, reportedly earned well over $1.5 million for his interim title challenge against Justin Gaethje at UFC 324, with his UFC 329 purse projected in a similar range given his continued box office appeal. That's a fighter considered one of the promotion's biggest young stars, and he's still making a small fraction of McGregor's guaranteed number, let alone his total take. Further down the card, the numbers shrink even more. Benoit Saint-Denis reportedly earned $286,000 for his win over Dan Hooker at UFC 325, and around $400,000 for his UFC 315 bout against Kyle Prepolek, with his purse for facing Pimblett at UFC 329 expected to climb further. Those are legitimate top 10 ranked fighters, putting their bodies on the line in 5-round wars, making less in a fight than McGregor reportedly made per second against Cerrone back in 2020. The bonus structure for the rest of the card only underscores how different McGregor's deal is from everyone else's. Paddy Pimblett and King Green earned performance bonuses of the night, securing another $100,000, while Royval vs. Kavanagh earned Fight of the Night, both earning $100,000 each, with a newly introduced finish bonus of $25,000 to each fighter, also awarded to those who finished their opponents. $100,000 is a career-changing bonus for most guys on that roster. For McGregor, it wouldn't even register against his base number. Go back to 2020, and the same gulf existed on that card too. Holly Holm earned $300,000 after stopping Raquel Pennington in the co-main event. Pennington earned $63,000, and former lightweight champion Anthony Pettis earned $155,000, while Carlos Diego Ferreira earned $100,000 after stopping the veteran with a second-round submission. Down at the bottom of that same card, Contender Series standout Ode Osborne banked a measly $10,000 for his Octagon debut. Put those numbers side by side with what McGregor pulled from a fight that lasted less time than it takes to boil an egg, and the picture becomes clear. UFC 246 featured the promotion's highest-paid fighter competing on the same card as the promotion's lowest-paid fighter, and McGregor banked a flat $3 million for less than a minute of work against Cerrone, while Cerrone made $200,000 for his loss, the same amount Holly Holm pulled for her win. That gap isn't a UFC accounting mistake, it's the entire business model. McGregor isn't paid for the work he does inside the cage. He's paid for how many people tune in to watch whatever happens, however long it lasts. Whether the fight goes 15 minutes or barely more than one, the number attached to his name barely moves because it was never really about the fight itself. It's about the crowd he pulls in just by showing up. That's why UFC 329 could break gate records the same night its main event fell apart in 69 seconds. The revenue had already been locked in through ticket sales, pay-per-view pre-orders, and sponsorship deals long before referee Mike Beltran waved off the fight. McGregor's paycheck was built on anticipation, not on minutes fought. Once the fight ended and the arena emptied out, the story shifted from money to McGregor's body, and from there to what happens next for a 37-year-old fighter with a suspected torn ACL and a legacy that just took another hit. McGregor didn't stick around for the usual post-fight formalities. He was clearly upset following the contest and refused to talk to Joe Rogan in the Octagon as he walked off, and was then seen leaving the arena outside before even changing. After the fight, McGregor immediately left the T-Mobile Arena, and White didn't get a chance to speak with him, but McGregor was seen leaving and declining the use of crutches. Hours later, he broke his silence with a statement that made clear how hard the moment hit him. He wrote that his head gasket was gone, destroyed, and that he had no injury going into the fight, that he'd been throwing kicks, planted, and jumping, all throughout camp as well as backstage before the fight, and that it came out of nowhere, describing himself as beyond dark and calling it hell. Dana White backed that account publicly, even as speculation about a pre-existing injury spread online. UFC CEO and President Dana White is of the belief that Conor McGregor blew out his ACL at UFC 329, telling reporters they were assuming a blown ACL, that he's no doctor, but that's what he figured when he saw it, and the doctors think the same thing too. Some clips circulating after the fight only added fuel to the speculation. There's been some question that McGregor might have gone into the fight injured, with one video clip aired on the broadcast showing him stumbling while taking off his shoes ahead of the fight. White addressed that directly, standing by what he'd seen at Fight Week events. Asked if the UFC knew McGregor was injured heading in, White said he had no idea, that he didn't know. The medical uncertainty is now tangled up with McGregor's contract situation and his age. If he did, in fact, tear his ACL, the recovery would likely keep him out well into next year before a return to the Octagon becomes plausible, and he'll turn 38 years old just days after the fight with just one fight remaining on his current UFC contract. One fight left on the books, a major recovery ahead of him, and a resume now showing back-to-back losses for the first time. McGregor has now lost 3 straight fights for the first time in his 29-fight career, with his lone win since 2016 coming against Donald Cerrone at UFC 246 in January 2020. Dana White was asked directly whether it might be time for McGregor to call it a career, and he didn't dodge the question, though he left the door open in his own way. White has been known to encourage fighters to retire when they begin to decline, though he noted he tends to base that on the athletes themselves broaching the subject, saying, "It's the guys who start saying they've been thinking about retiring. The minute you start talking or thinking about it." Holloway, for his part, wasn't gloating about the win at all. If anything, he sounded like a guy who wanted a real rematch, not a walkover. Former featherweight champ Holloway said he would discuss the possibility of staging another fight with McGregor when the Irishman recovers. Asked whether the finish made a third fight harder to sell, he waved that off completely. Holloway said, "Not at all. You saw the numbers this thing was getting." That last line is really the whole story in one sentence. The fight barely happened. The finish was miserable for everyone watching, and McGregor left the building without saying a word to the broadcast crew. But the numbers, the gate, the views, the purse had already done exactly what they were built to do. 69 seconds bought McGregor tens of millions of dollars, a suspected torn ACL, a third straight loss, and if Holloway gets his way, a shot at a rubber match whenever the knee heals up. Whether that trilogy fight ever actually happens is anyone's guess. What's not in question is the number sitting next to McGregor's name for that 1 minute and 9 seconds in Las Vegas, a figure most people won't see in a decade, earned in less time than it takes to read this sentence twice.